My great-grandmother Emma used to have this saying, life may be short, but it's also wide. Isn't that a cool saying? I mean, it's a paradigm shift. Life has limits, but there's also possibilities. There are obstacles in life, but there are workarounds. A wide life means all of us have a chance for a do-over. My name is Allison Young, and my trail name is Blissful Hiker. Now, you would think with a name like Blissful, I would have no problem with Great-Grandma Emma's mantra, life is wide. But I do have a problem with it. It was very difficult for me to live out this mantra. I can't do it. It's like I can't just be normal. I can't just be normal. My great-grandmother Emma had this saying, life may be short, but it's also wide. Isn't that a wonderful saying? It's a paradigm shift. Life has limits, but there are also possibilities. There may be obstacles in life, but there are workarounds. If a life is wide, it means all of us have a chance for a do-over. My name is Allison Young. My trail name is Blissful Hiker. And you would think with a name like Blissful, I would have no problem living out Great-Grandma Emma's life is wide mantra. And you'd be wrong. It would take me 5 million steps on my first thru hike to understand what Emma was talking about. I learned that life is wide when I did one of the wildest things of my life. I gave up something of great value in a trade for a sabbatical so that I could hike the entire length of New Zealand. So just a little bit about my background. I've hiked and backpacked since I could walk, and it had always been my dream to backpack one of these long thru hikes, one over 1,000 miles that would take many months to complete, that would become kind of a way of life. And time was definitely running out for me. I was in my mid-50s and I didn't have forever. So I chose for my first long-distance thru hike New Zealand's Te Araroa. Te Araroa is Maori. Te is the Ara long roa pathway or journey. It's kind of the Appalachian Trail of New Zealand. Absolutely stunning scenery, mountains, alpine volcanoes like this in Tongariro, beaches, goblin forests where I would hear birds that I'd never heard before in my life. And of course, my goal was to see what would happen to me on this long distance trail if I could do it at all, but also what would happen to my body, mind, and spirit, kind of a trifecta if I did a long distance trail. And it was certainly really risky to go this far because if things didn't work out, it was a long way to come back. It was very expensive. So I did it. The beginning of this 2,000-mile walk in October took me about 36 hours to fly from Minnesota to Auckland and then finally up to Kerikeri and drive another 3 to 4 hours to Cape Reinga. Cape Reinga is such a mysterious and spiritual place. It's the meeting place of two oceans right at the northern tip of New Zealand. So you have the Tasman Sea and the Pacific Ocean coming together. And it's very, very special and sacred to the Maori. Reinga, R-E-I-N-G-A, in Maori means underworld. It's also the place of leaping, where Maori spirits begin their final journey to the eternal. Now, of course, I wasn't planning my final journey to the eternal, but I couldn't help but see that there was a metaphor in all of this kind of leap. I was leaping into the unknown. I was taking a leap of faith by doing this hike. And this idea of these metaphors continued on the first night. The campsite was called Twilight Campsite. Now, when you look at the view, you might say, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's going to have this beautiful light as the sun goes down. But there's a double meaning in twilight. It's a period of obscurity, a period of ambiguity, right before the unknown is ushered in. So the magnitude of what I was doing in New Zealand really hit me full force on that first night. I mean, what am I doing here? What am I thinking? Can I even complete this trail? All of those miles and all of the unknown was ahead of me, and it was just very powerful. Well, 20 years before I was at Twilight Campsite in New Zealand, I was a professional flutist. I had a completely different career. This is a picture that a friend sent me recently from Tanglewood. It's the summer home of the Boston Symphony. This is me right here, and this is Leonard Bernstein. If you've seen the Bradley Cooper film Maestro, it's about the great maestro Leonard Bernstein. I had a career of this level. I was a soloist. I played with orchestras. I toured. I made recordings. And there came this day, as I was playing, as I was going through my career, when I lifted my flute to my face and I couldn't remember where to put my fingers. It seems that I had developed a neurological movement disorder, an incurable movement disorder called dystonia, or musician's dystonia. And dystonia is horrible. It mixes up the signals that you've taken for granted all these years, the expert signals that are required from the brain to do very complex and intricate movements. You simply can't see them anymore is kind of the best way to explain it. I'd never even heard of dystonia. I had no warning. It was just this absolutely devastating and cosmic ripoff of a loss. Of course, I saw doctors, I rebuilt my flute, but nothing was going to bring me back to the expert level that I'd played before. And there came this day when I had to say, things have changed. You know, there's a lot of risk-taking, a kind of breathtaking risk in saying those words out loud. Things have changed. This is real. I've had this loss. Because what it means is that we accept the fact that our future is completely unknown. So in New Zealand, on those first days, I thought about the unknown and the risk that I was taking. It was all ahead of me. I had no idea if I could even do the hike, if I had what it takes, if I could injure myself, or if I could just hate it. I might not like it. Helen Keller has this wonderful quote about risk-taking, and I'm sure you've heard it before. A lot of people have it on motivational posters. She says, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. It's so wonderful. It gets you like powered up to take on a new risk or get yourself out of your comfort zone. But what I love is what she says right before that. She says that security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. I mean, she really makes a case for why we have to have a life of daring adventure. Of course, we all want to be secure. We want to be in control because we're afraid of the unknown. We want to feel like we can hang on to things. But a new body of scientific research tells us that leaning into the unknown can actually be good for us. It makes us more adaptable, more flexible, more resilient. We shouldn't avoid risks because they trigger beneficial neural changes, like being able to take in information and adapt to it more quickly, and actually retain and use that information. We have heightened awareness when we lean into the unknown. Our life actually, in the words of great-grandma Emma, widens when we take risks. When I decided to walk the length of New Zealand, I needed to pay for it. And I put up this picture right now because I was thinking about the little colt there next to her horse family and how she's safe right now, but eventually she's going to have to break away and make her own family. Anyway, going back to this idea, I needed to pay for my trip to New Zealand. I mean, obviously, I saved money and I planned for it. I was going to have an unpaid leave of absence to do it. And it occurred to me, actually on a hike, that I had one thing of great value that I could sell to pay for this trip. It was something that I hung on to all those years after I developed dystonia. It was my professional flute. And what was really weird about it was the flute was valued at exactly the amount that I, projected that I needed. And it was this moment of realizing I wanted to take the hike more than I wanted to hang on to this dream or this hope that somehow I would be cured of dystonia and I could go back to playing the way I had played before. I could go back to that life. So it took me 20 years, but I sold my flute. And there was something really sacred in that moment, a kind of quid pro quo of the universe. I let go of the flute for a hike. And the very first lesson that I learned that made me realize life is wide is about taking risks. I mean, you sometimes need to let go of something of great value so that you can lean into uncomfortable places like the unknown, like what's coming next, and then develop what I like to call curiosity over certainty. So moving along on the trail, I love this sign. I mean, people in New Zealand, the hikers in New Zealand, normally just assume that everything's risky and everything's dangerous. But I guess now that there's this international hike, they want to make sure you know that what's coming up is going to be difficult. So they, put up this sign, and I've got this kind of shit-eating grin on my face. Backpackers often anthropomorphize trails that they're on. You know what I mean? Like we say, the trail is like a person, like the trail is in charge of making us feel good or not. We often say things like the trail doesn't care about what you want it to be. And we give them this power to delight us or frustrate us. And we usually say these kinds of things when it's a rainy day all day long and you're hiking uphill and you get to a view and there's nothing there and you just have to go straight back down. Or if you're hiking in the New Zealand bush.
This is serious business.
This is serious business. So that was my first day walking through New Zealand bush, and it is so muddy and just constant mess. You just can't go very fast. And actually, the friend that I was hiking with, we couldn't get through this first forest in the Northland in one day. So we had to camp just in sort of a wide spot in the trail. There was no water. We had plenty to drink, but we didn't have any to wash. Can you imagine getting into your sleeping bag looking like that? So anyway, the trail tends to humble us. It teaches us to savor good days and kind of laugh when it's sunny and windy and wild. And then to survive the bad days. Because really so much, again, to go along with this theme, is out of our control. Well, there was a day in New Zealand that was unexpectedly hard for me. And I say unexpectedly because everything seemed to be going my way. I mean, it was a beautiful, clear day. I was hiking with a young man named Tomáš from the Czech Republic. And he knew a lot about crossing rivers, which was really, really important. Now, since we'd had clear weather for many days, we thought that we would be perfectly fine crossing this very, very long riverbed because the water didn't have a chance of rising. There wasn't a chance of flash floods. And this meant that we could take a shortcut. You would have had to hike way down or take a hitchhike way down a road, get a bridge, and come back. And instead, we were going to go straight across it. So this is the Rangitata River. And basically what it is a braided river. So it's 6 miles across of rocks and many, many different channels of fast-flowing river, as well as quicksand. And really the most treacherous part, which you need to be careful of in case there's flash floods because the water can rise really fast, is the one main channel. And when Tomasz and I got there, and we really had to look for a safe place to cross, we needed to know how to cross properly, we needed to look for the fall line in case we fell in. But as you can see, I'm working my way through slowly, but the water isn't above my knees. So as long as you're careful, you really shouldn't be knocked over. And I did it. I felt amazing. I felt so strong. I was really, really full of myself. I kind of had this attitude of I'm telling nature who's in charge. Well, I got a bit ahead of myself because after we crossed the river, things started to continue to be difficult. I wouldn't say quite as dangerous, but we had to go up Bush Stream. And this is actually kind of famous on the Te Araroa because oftentimes they'll say, follow the stream and until you get to its end and then, work your way up. There's no actual trail. There's just a direction that's given. That's why they often call it a route. So you can see here, it's fast moving. It was cold. It's rocky. You could really lose your footing. It's tiring. And I love this picture of Tomasz in water up to his thighs. It's deep and it was difficult. He was able to make it across no problem. You find the big pools. But as you can see behind him, there are big mountains coming up. It's the Two Thumb Range. And once we got up to them, I realized that it wasn't just a matter of like one climb and we were going to get to a place we had to camp. It was up and down and up and down over and over on repeat. And I was so tired. I was hungry. All of that feeling of like how powerful and how strong I was had just disappeared. And on day 100 of the Te Araroa, I completely lost it.
I don't want to come home. I don't want to be here anymore. It's too hard. The grass is taller than my head. And the rocks are at my feet. And there's no trail. And I want some beer. I want some candy and beer.
I hope you could hear everything I said. I'm a little bit manic. I'm crying and saying I want to come home, and the grass is taller than my head, the rocks hurt my feet, there's no trail, and all I want is candy and beer. I just want sugar and carbohydrates. I was completely losing it, but I'm also kind of laughing at myself. Look at this beautiful place where I was. There wasn't any true hardship. It wasn't snowing. It wasn't, rising rivers. It was just me kind of losing it. Well, I mentioned to you at the beginning that I was in my mid-50s when I started this trail, and time was running out. And time really was running out specifically for me because my body was beginning to break down. All along my maternal line, all the way from great-grandma Emma, runs debilitating arthritis. Emma was in a wheelchair by the time she was 36 years old. It's a different time. Didn't have the best drugs at that time, but still, it was scary. And I could feel it already happening for me. Also, breast cancer was in every single woman coming down to me. So I knew these things were coming for me. When my arthritis got so bad that I actually had to have both of my hips replaced, I was so angry. I felt like, okay, dystonia was enough. It wiped out my flute career. I had to get another career. Why this too? And then when I was diagnosed with breast cancer myself and had to go through treatment, I felt scared and overwhelmed. I also felt anger. One of the questions that I kept asking was, why me? Why me? Why do I have to deal with this? So there's another saying in the backpacking world that I think you've probably heard or maybe said yourself. Never quit on a bad day. This is the next day after I had that terrible breakdown. Just absolutely beautiful. Going over the highest, it's called Stag Saddle, the highest point of the Tearoa and then climbing up to a mountain above it and looking around. It was just absolutely glorious. Oftentimes, we tend to celebrate people who accept change and hardship and negative outcomes and health issues with stoicism. We say they're courageous and brave. We say they're an inspiration. But I kind of have my doubts about that. I mean, I think that sometimes people may be denying their darker and totally human emotions, or maybe just like me, I'm just over emotional and I think it's okay. I think it's good. I mean, of course, it's good and healthy to be positive and upbeat, but there's research on my side about this. There's research that says negative emotions like anger and anxiety and sorrow and regret can actually work for us. They can actually be good because they trigger positive behaviors. In fact, it's the opposite that can make it hard for us. Not feeling and not expressing negative emotions can make us feel more powerless emotions like shame. Shame is an emotion that says, I should be feeling a certain way. I should have done this. Or regret, looking back and saying, why didn't I do that? And then you get kind of paralyzed in your movements. When my body broke down, especially when I had the cancer diagnosis, a very wise person said to me, go ahead, be a wall-punching profanicator. I'm going to say that again because it's so funny. A wall-punching profanicator. She said, let it out, be angry, give yourself permission to grieve. And what was so interesting about it is that once I did, I moved out of this space of why me to why not me. And when I got there, it enabled me to move forward and to act. I actually, almost quite literally, rolled up my sleeves and said, all right, what do we do now? And I moved forward. I moved into the next thing. There's a story from ancient Persia where a king asks his wise men to give him a phrase that could be true for all human conditions. And the phrase is, this too shall pass. The second lesson that I learned on trail is that everything changes. I mean, it didn't exactly make me wise or grounded. It definitely didn't make me stoic. But once I saw the world as wide enough for change, I saw that it was wide enough to feel emotions too, and to feel grief if I needed to. The Austrian psychologist Viktor Frankl has this wonderful sentence that he says about finding meaning and finding power in your life. He said that there's no need to be ashamed of tears, for tears bear witness that a man or a woman has the greatest of courage, the courage to suffer. Saying no, that I hate this, I don't want this, maybe doesn't make change less awful, but it means that we're fully alive. And in some ways, that's why I backpack long distance through hikes, even when you have mud, is to feel alive. Long distance through hiking is unique in this idea of change. I mean, every day gives us a chance for a do-over. A muddy, horrible, endless trail like this can end like this. Each morning, we get to ask ourselves, who do I want to be today? What attitude am I going to adopt? If things are difficult and they don't work out, there's always the next day and the next day and the next day. Risk-taking and entering this oscillation of life's rhythms, the idea of change, good luck, bad luck, just different things coming at us, is all part of moving into the paradigm of life being wide. But one of the biggest obstacles is believing that life can be wide and believing that there's something more on the other side when things are difficult. After my flute career came to an end, I started another career. I became a classical music radio host for American Public Media. I actually worked in Houston for about a year and a half, and then my biggest part of my career, my biggest chunk, was here in St. Paul with American Public Media. And it was really interesting. I mean, it was such a change for me because I was still a performer, I was still in music, but I was suddenly like a cheerleader. I was on the sidelines talking about orchestras that I used to play with. And I learned a lot. I really loved it, and I thrived for 15 years. But there came a time when I really wanted a change. And unfortunately for me, so did my employer, really before I was ready for a change. Have you ever seen the 100% pure New Zealand ads? They have a lot to be proud of in New Zealand. This is Taranaki. I actually climbed up to the top of it to see the sunrise on the new year of 2019. So I was working at American Public Media, and I saw these ads, and I thought, oh yeah, this is where I'm going. This is where I'm going to do my first long distance hike. This is where I'm going to test everything, do the walk before my body breaks down. I'm going to take this leave of absence, sell my flute. Everything's going to be amazing. And New Zealand is amazing. It's beautiful. It's wild. It's exotic. It's absolutely glorious. But one of the things they don't tell you, or they say it really quickly in passing, if you're near water, you're going to encounter something so awful and so distracting that you will not be able to even see how beautiful New Zealand is. It's called the sandfly. Now, to be fair, in this horrible, nightmarish picture, the sound you're hearing are locusts. Sandflies don't really make any sound, but look how they're just swarming around me. They're really awful. They're tiny black flies that suck our blood. The Maori call them te amu, little devils. And the sandfly is such a part of the ecosystem of New Zealand that the Maori have even included a creation myth about where the sandfly comes from. I'm going to show you this awful picture just really briefly. Even with all those clothes on, I guess just in the millisecond of taking off my socks, they were still able to get in there and bite me. So that leaves this horrible, oozing, itchy awfulness. It's kind of like poison ivy. So anyway, back to this idea. I'm going to put this beautiful picture on. There were sandflies here too, but you don't see my oozing feet. So back to this idea of the creation myth. So it's said that the goddess of the underworld created the sandfly. Now, why did she do this? Well, she said that it is so beautiful here that people will want to stay forever. So I will create the sandfly to remind them that they are just passing through. I mean, talk about a humbling experience. The lonely sandfly, this tiny little creature, is a lesson in life's brevity, in our mortality, in our fragility, in our vulnerability. The sandfly reminds us that everything we love, everything we cherish, all that we've put into our lives that makes us who we are, eventually passes away. So I like to sometimes say that that nasty sandfly is an abundance mentality buzzkill. But wait, before we stay there and we just kind of feel dark about everything and think of death, there is a twist to the story that makes it even better. So the sandflies swarmed me when I was swimming or soaking in hot springs. This is an unretouched photo of a place that had emerald pools, and the water was amazing, but you had to basically stay up to here in the water to keep the sandflies away. But the amazing thing about the New Zealand sandfly, or the bush sandfly, is that unlike the mosquito, sandflies only land on you when you're still. I mean, in other words, they will not land or bite you if you are moving. Think about that. Not at all. So the obvious thing to do is to keep moving and to get away from water sources as quickly as you can. But the Maori also saw a wonderful life lesson in this sort of second part of the sandfly story. They say, of course, the sandfly was created to remind us that life is short. But the sandfly was also created to remind us that life is wide. It's wide because there's more out there. There's more opportunities. There's more life to live. Don't stop moving. Don't stop exploring. Don't stop noticing or stagnating. I mean, life may be filled with sandfly bites, but if you keep moving, you'll notice other paths where the sandfly doesn't live. There's another wonderful phrase that I love to live by in the backpacking world. Maybe you've heard this one before. It was the first time I heard it was in New Zealand. Let the day unfold. I mean, it's kind of the opposite of carpe diem, to grab things and to hold them grasping. But, it still means you make plans. It still means you're prepared. But you allow and you surrender. You let things happen. You let amazing moments like this one, when I'm walking and another hiker happened to be coming the other way and I handed him my camera and he was able to get a picture of me walking into this brilliant space. And somehow, when you let the day unfold, it requires you to believe that there's more out there. There's more than you can even imagine for you. So I ended up finishing and walking New Zealand's Te Araroa, my first long-distance thru hike, about 2,000 miles. I did some extra trails to make it an even 2,000 miles. I walked through mud, swarms of sandflies, over mountains, across rivers, and finally ended up back at the ocean, back at the beach. This is about 2 days from the end. And I was walking along and I looked down and found this seashell. Now, this is not the kind of seashell that most people would collect because it's not perfect at all. It's beaten up. It's even cut in a certain way. It's sort of torn and it's kind of jagged. It's worn from the sea. And yet I picked it up because the inside made me think of all of the lessons that I'd learned. It was solid. It was solid as a rock and still holding, even after all of the tumbling in the sea. Lao Tzu says that when you realize there's nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. I mean, I guess another way you could say it is, life is short, but it's also wide. So a wise person told me once, to give it all away, you'll make more. And all of a sudden I realized this idea of more and the trifecta came together. At the beginning I said I wanted to go and obviously hike the hike, but my body, mind, and spirit all being touched. The body was touched because of taking risks, being willing to live in uncertainty and the unknown. The mind accepts that everything changes, that this too shall pass, the bad and the good, and is willing to grieve the change in order to step forward. And the spirit lets the day unfold by surrendering and allowing and believing that there's more for us out there. These 3 lessons, I believe, can change your entire outlook. They certainly did for me. From loss to possibility, from anxious to blissful, and from narrow to wide. And that's when I got to the end. This is the sign at Bluff. Bluff is the final point of the southern part of New Zealand. Someone lifted me up and put me on New York. I think I weighed only 100 pounds at that point, and they put me there because I was born in New York, so it was perfect. So I just want to mention, thank you so much for listening. I want to mention that I've put a couple of materials. You can download them from the Hike Like a Woman website for this talk, from my page for this talk. And it just kind of outlines and lists some of the things you saw with some inspirational pictures, etc. And also, I'd love to hear where you're watching from. Let me know where you're listening from, where you're watching from, and maybe what your challenges are and what you're doing about it. Love to start a conversation. So do keep in touch. My website is blissfulhiker.com. And I'll say goodbye with departing words that the Maori use. It's really quite beautiful and has this wonderful meaning. They don't say so long, adios, goodbye, hasta la vista. They tell you to be strong. And the way you say it is kia kaha. Kia kaha, my friends. Be strong and happy trails. Bye.